to be humble, to be kind. It is a giving of the peace in your mind, to a stranger, to a friend, to give in such a way that has no end. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, nothing more. And tell me what it is that you see, a world that's full of endless possibility, and heroes don't look like they used to, they look like you do. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other.
Good morning, and good morning. I like that. Let's hear it again. Good morning. Welcome to Fenway Park. My name is Sam Kennedy. I'm the president and CEO of the Boston Red Sox. And on behalf of John Henry, Tom Werner, and our entire Red Sox organization, it is my privilege and my honor to welcome each and every one of you to Fenway. I have a special welcome for two people sitting right there, nearly in the front row. You're behind the mayor, which is where you should be. Tom and Joanna Kennedy, my parents. Thank you very much for being here today. My dad is really upset that we haven't clinched yet. The origins of this partnership and today's event began in the wake of two appalling incidents involving hate speech right here at Fenway Park. Those incidents reinforced the need for a more open and honest conversation around race. The very day John Henry and I apologized to Adam Jones for the experience he endured here at Fenway, I also had the incredible opportunity to speak to Governor Charlie Baker and Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. Both men immediately expressed their remorse over the incident and offered their full support and encouragement. We are all very thankful for their guidance, their leadership, and especially thankful to Mayor Walsh for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We also had the good fortune that day to sit down with State Senator Linda Dorsina-Forey and NAACP Boston Branch President Tanisha Sullivan to gain their counsel, their wisdom, and their perspective. During that initial discussion, Tanisha aptly pointed out that these incidents tend to fade away as quickly as they flare up. That's why we are all here today, to help build something meaningful and lasting. In early June, our dialogue began in earnest with the other Boston area sports teams because these issues obviously affect all of us. So thank you to the Jacobs family, the Kraft family, to Wick Grosbeck, and to Steve Paliuca for sharing this vision and forging this partnership. On a personal note, I have been a diehard Boston sports fan my entire life. So it is an honor to be here today with Don Sweeney, Andre Tippett, Cedric Maxwell, and the great Tommy Harper. Today is a great start, but it is obviously not the end. In addition to focusing on fan behavior within each of our venues, the 5 teams will team up to offer a fellowship that will provide work experiences at each and every team. We will also be partnering on a career fair to communicate the various employment opportunities across the Boston sports landscape. We hope that these initiatives will inspire others to lend their voices, their energy, and their commitment to the important work that is in front of all of us. Speaking of strong voices, energy, and commitment, I am proud to introduce our MC for today, the Reverend Liz Walker. Reverend Walker has enjoyed a 21-year career on WBZ as Boston's first African-American television news anchor. She then spent another 11 years as a humanitarian in East Africa before answering her call to the ministry. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome pastor of the Roxbury Presbyterian Church, Reverend Liz Walker.
Thank you. The plans for today actually began several months ago, as Sam mentioned. But the events of recent days have given this gathering a far greater urgency. I know it would be much easier if we were here to talk about home runs and touchdown passes and slap shots and three-pointers. But we're here to talk about something critical. We're here to talk about race, a subject that stirs our passions, a subject that confuses us, angers, and frightens us, a topic that many of us would rather avoid altogether, even though it always seems to fester just beneath the surface of life in this country, ready to break open in a moment's notice. Racism is a wound that runs deep. It is the root of generations of distrust and defensiveness and misunderstanding. And whether we admit it or not, we all bear its power and its pain. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas during the birth of the Civil Rights Movement and school desegregation. And I will never forget that morning in my 7th grade math class when a young, good-looking white boy came up, called me a name, and kicked me. It's been more than 50 years. Okay, maybe it's been more than 60 years. But I have struggled mightily with that moment. I have tried desperately to let go of the shame, the humiliation, and rage of that moment. And I am still struggling. Some wounds will never heal without light and air. That's why this gathering today is so important. We do not have all the answers, but we are ready to take the lead to begin the conversation. We are ready to look in each other's eyes and bring light and air to each other's wounds. This is the choice that our sports team have made, and they are to be commended. They are to be celebrated. Any idiot can bully, divide, and polarize us. to return hate with hate, or it takes somebody special to try to reach across the breach, and we can talk and listen, really listen to each other. That takes much more work. It involves great risk, but with compassion and empathy, and yes, with love, that can make a difference. So today is important. We thank you for being here. The first step in this conversation is to show up, and you have done that. Today, as Sam mentioned, began with an idea. And he's already mentioned the two women, the two community leaders who made that idea work, who made this day happen. But I just want to speak for the community in thanking them. The NAACP is the oldest civil rights organization in this country. It is committed to the elimination of racism in all facets of our society. So I just want to take one more moment to thank Boston Branch President Tanisha Sullivan. She helped make this happen. While today we're focusing on professional sports, the implication of race affects every sector and often is embedded in its structures. The Massachusetts legislature must take the lead in helping to change structures and systems. And one of the strongest voices, State Senator Linda Dorsina-Forey. I just want to thank my sisters. You will hear from both of them in a moment. Taking the lead to change the way we look at and talk about race requires the involvement of all of us. The Bruins, the Celtics, the Patriots, the Red Sox and Revolution are working together to take the lead in their own way. Because as David Ortiz proclaimed on the field here, this is our city. We are proud of Boston, and together we can make it stronger and we can make it better. I am honored to be a part of the launch of this mission, and we are deeply grateful that many of our political and community leaders are here to offer their support. I just want to mention that we have the Mass Black and Latino Caucus, we have former educators, and we have Sheriff Stephen Tompkins here with us today, and we thank you. One person who couldn't be here with us today is Governor Charlie Baker, but he did want to offer his support in a few words.
Hey everybody, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker here, and I'm sorry I can't be there with you today. My schedule precludes my attendance, but our team is proud to be part of the teams you're going to hear from later on who are part of taking the lead here in the Commonwealth. Massachusetts is proud to be home to an inclusive, multicultural, welcoming, and global community. The Commonwealth, Boston, our communities and schools stand for open-mindedness, unity, and tolerance. That includes our sports teams and public spaces, places for fun and entertainment with our families, friends, and fellow fans of the game. Unfortunately, in recent months, disturbing and intolerable demonstrations of racism and bigotry have challenged our communities, our state, and our nation. But the actions of a few are not who we are as a Commonwealth. In the face of discrimination, prejudice, and hatred, it's incumbent upon us all to stand up and passionately reject and denounce intolerance in any form. I want to applaud our local professional sports teams, the Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, Patriots, and Revolution, for coming together to address this important issue and united to take the lead. I hope the work that you will hear about at today's events will inspire you to do the same and encourage others as well. This is our chance as a Commonwealth to collectively take the lead and denounce any encounter with racism, hatred, or intolerance. Together, we can and will showcase Massachusetts' ability to lead the world as a place where all are welcome. I hope you all have a great day, and I hope that this is the start of something really big.
And now I'd like to introduce someone who has been taking the lead for our city since 2014. Please welcome Boston's Mayor, Marty Walsh.
Thank you, Liz, and it's great to be here, and I want to thank you, Liz Walker, for the great things that you have done for our city. I want to thank everyone for turning out today. I'm going to give a couple thank yous, and I'll get into my remarks. I want to thank Commissioner Evans is here with us as well. Thank you, Commissioner Evans, for what you do. I know Sheriff Tompkins got a shout-out, but I have to give him another shout-out for the great work he's doing in our city. Thank you, Sheriff Tompkins, for the great work you're doing. I think I saw Senator Sonia Chang Diaz here. Thank you, Senator. Where are you? Thank you, Senator, for being here with us today as well, for the great work you've done as State Senator. State Representative Russell Holmes, another champion of working in our communities. Thank you very much for the great work you do. I'm going to get to you guys in a minute in the front row there. I want to thank Liz Walker. I want to thank Steve Burton for being here today and being our moderators. We couldn't find two better people. Thank you very much for what you've done. I know I just saw Steve's down the runway there. Sam Kennedy and the Boston Red Sox, thank you for hosting us today. I'm glad you brought your mom and dad here. At least you brought them to something here. I hope you get tickets for tonight's game for them. But I want to thank you, Sam, for hosting us. And I want to give a shout out to our teams in Boston. When Tanisha and Linda reached out and we spoke, we talked about coming here, and we said, do you think we can get all the teams here? I'm like, yeah, they'll all be here because they're incredible people. And Tanisha and Linda have done an incredible job rallying this conversation, and to think about my conversation with Tanisha was, how can we do something impactful that's not just like a one-time hit? How do we do something? It's not like, oh, we're going to do it now, and then we all feel good about each other, and then we kind of forget, and then later on down the road, we're like, okay, what happened with that? And the impact today, really, between these two women driving this car, and all of our families from the sports teams, and our sports teams are literally families. Thank you very much, Bruins, Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, Revolution. Thank you for what you do for our city every single day. Thank you for being here today in this important conversation. So I want to thank you. I just want to commend everyone in making this public service announcement and the entire Take the Lead project. It's a powerful message that says everyone has a part to play in ending racism. It's using the power of sports to make a real difference. And as you can see, the power of sports is bringing a lot of conversation to the United States of America right now, when in our football stadiums, in our basketball stadiums, and other stadiums. And it's important we can take a message like racism and turn into a positive and actually have an impact across the United States of America that actually can be taken across the world, because our athletes, whether it's football, hockey, basketball, baseball, or soccer, they're international sports that people watch and play all over the world. So this message in Boston, Massachusetts is going to go right around the United States and right around the world. So again, thank you for that. Boston is certainly a city for all of us. It means for every child, every adult, every race should feel at home and feel part of our city. Boston must feel dedicated to ending racism wherever it appears, in attitudes and in comments, and in systems and in opportunities. The national conversation has been ugly at times. Some voices in Washington aren't helping us at the least. But there's no reason why we should shy away from the conversation of race. Our role here in Boston should be to take the lead, the guide to that conversation in the direction of justice and in healing. Our city began 4 years ago when I became mayor and talking about citywide dialogues on race. That was one piece of the conversation and one piece of the puzzle. It's why our police strategy is built on building with community and reaching out to our communities. I see some giants who have been fighting for civil rights in the legislature, representatives like Byron Rushing, who've been there through ups and downs, and thank you, Byron, for what you've done in our city. We need to continue these conversations with our police department, with our fire department, with our EMS, with our public safety officials all over. The conversation isn't just about an incident that happened at Fenway Park. It's about what's happening in our city every single day. The decision to build a memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King is one of a lesson in progress that just didn't happen by itself. We're not building a statue. We're beginning a conversation, a dialogue about the words that he said and what he meant. His words are more true today than they were actually, we could argue with, than when he spoke about them in the 50s and 60s. because we're still turning around as a city. We're still trying to find our identity. Sports is perfectly designed to expressing shared commitment. That's why what we're doing today is so powerful, and what the sports teams are doing today is so powerful. Think of the impact that Jackie Robinson had. Think of the impact that Bill Russell had as a player and now is still having. And by the way, Bill Russell is the only statue on City Hall Plaza right now. And think about that evolution and progress. We feel civic pride in our players and our teams and iconic stadiums. They reflect our identity. This pride must be built on the fundamental values. If a Yankees fan gets up at Fenway Park and talks trash, he's going to hear about it from his whole section. If a person says something racist in any public or private space, that reaction should be 100 times stronger, and particularly in our parks, in our streets, in our playgrounds, in our schools. It's a matter of pride. Racism violates our core values as a city. We certainly reject it. When we do that, we strengthen our collective resolve. And to end systemic racism, to share the opportunity more equally, and to put Boston first for all. I want to thank everyone for being here today. And I do want to do a special thank you because I've had the chance to get to know her now over the last 6 months, a little longer than that. But Tanisha Sullivan and myself, and with the work with Linda and other folks, we've talked about how do we advance people of color in city government. And that's important conversations. And it's important for us to make sure that we make sure the command staff is diverse. And it's important to make sure that my cabinet's diverse. And it's important to make sure that people have opportunities for employment in the city of Boston in different areas. But the issue of racism and the issue of hate goes to the core of who we are as human beings. And this truly is a conversation that I'm glad that we're having here on the field at Fenway Park. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is now my privilege to welcome to the stage WBZ TV Sports Director Steve Burton, who will moderate today's panel discussions with alumni and executives from the teams. Steve and I are former colleagues. We go way back. He has deep roots in sports. Of course, his father, Ron Burton Sr., was the first draft pick of the New England Patriots in their inaugural year, 1960. Steve, who played quarterback at Northwestern University, returned home to become the first African-American broadcaster at Nesson in 1988, before moving 6 years later to WBZ. Continuing the family tradition of sports excellence, Steve's son, Austin, is a freshman quarterback at UCLA. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Steve Burton.
Thank you, Liz. And the mayor nailed it. The mayor nailed it. It's time that we come together. It's time that we really take the lead and come together. And Liz talked about it, doing it with love. And I'm honored to be up here on stage with some men I'm going to call up here who are willing to share their experience, to look back on their times, to make a difference in fighting racism. And we can do it together. We can definitely do it together. I want to call up on stage, please welcome Boston Red Sox Hall of Famer, Tommy Harper. NFL Hall of Famer with the Patriots, Andre Tippett. I had to play against Andre in college. He played for Iowa. He sacked me, hit me so hard, but he had the courtesy to pick me up afterwards. I appreciate that. Homegrown Boston Bruin, Bob Sweeney. Who's the executive director of the Boston Bruins Foundation. Bob, come on up. Thank you for taking the time. Celtics radio analyst, Cedric Maxwell, whose number has been retired. Up in the rafters. Max is always looking dapper. Come on up, Max. Thank you. We plan to have fun today, but we plan to have a message. We plan to come together. Max, I want to start with you. Whoa. I know. What was your perception when you first came to Boston, and how has it changed?
Hated it. When I
Hated
first got
it?
here. Yeah, because I'm from the South, and I thought that Atlanta was picking right after the Celtics. So I thought it was a great opportunity to stay down south. When the Celtics picked me, it was I got up here and tried to understand, the culture of Boston. I didn't see a lot of people like me for a while until I, somebody took me to Roxbury, and then I was like, man, Dorchester, so I went there. So it was really different. But the atmosphere here in Boston has changed now. And from being a person who didn't like it to now a person to consider this as my home. And I really like Boston now.
So you've seen it change?
I've seen a big change. I've seen a great change in the way people are viewed. I've seen a great change in the way people respect each other. Yep. And I've just seen a general purpose. You look at the Boston Celtics more than any other team, this is the team that had the first black player. Chuck Cooper was the first black player. The first black head coach was Bill Russell. The first starting five on any team right now, that was the Boston Celtics, Bill Russell's team. So the Celtics have had a leap in diversity for a long, long time.
Tommy Harper, what a story you have. You've been here. You came here in '72. I want you to share your story, if you will.
Okay, these are my words.
Your words.
But I have to read them.
God bless you.
In '71, I was traded to the Red Sox. And during the first week of spring training, I was informed of a relationship between the Red Sox and a segregated Winter Haven, Florida Elks Club. I did not comment publicly about the relationship because it was already being whispered that I was an agitator. That label followed me from Milwaukee when I spoke out against a racist practice of the Brewers. And that label followed me right to Boston. So that label, being an agitator, spelled the worst kind of trouble for any African-American player. So when I came here, as Cedric pointed out, at first I didn't like it.
You didn't like it?
Didn't like it at all. And when I would always, when people approached me during the years, and a lot of those people told me about their experiences with coming to Fenway Park, they're all excited. When they were kids, their fathers, their grandfathers took them to Fenway Park, and they just loved the atmosphere of Fenway Park. My experience was far different.
But here's the thing that I want to point out. You didn't like it at first,
Right.
but you stayed.
Yes.
You stayed. Tell me, if you would, share with the people what happened at the Elks Club back in Winter Haven.
Well, actually, my involvement with the Elks Club came when Michael Madden, a sports columnist for the Boston Globe, approached me in the spring of 1985. Now, the situation with the Elks Club, where a person from the Elks Club would come into the locker room, the Red Sox locker room, and distribute Elks Club passes to the white players and white staff only. And when I asked Reggie Smith, I didn't know anything about it because I'm new. So when I asked Reggie Smith about Whenever somebody in baseball wants you to see something, they put it in your locker, they put it right above your locker and stick it in. I said, Reggie, what's all the passes for? He said, they're to get into the Elks Club. I said, what happened to ours? How come we didn't get one? He said, because we're skin color. And right from that point on, I knew that I could never be a part of Red Sox Nation.
But it changed.
It changed.
Okay, we'll get to that change in a second. I want to bring in Tip. You saw you are an employee of the New England Patriots. You saw the players take a knee on Sunday. You saw some of them lock arms on Sunday. When you saw it, Andre Tippett, what were you thinking? And why?
I thought, wow. Just the way we do things around there in the organization, it was just looked a little out of character. But then when I really thought about what was going on, it brought me back to, we live in a democratic society. Free speech, free religion. As long as you're not hurting anyone, we're free to practice and do anything that we want, as long as we're not hurting anyone. And the fact that we did do it as a team, lock arms, took a knee, as cliche as it sounds, we were doing it as a patriotic community. And I was proud to see the players do it.
Bob Sweeney, I want to bring you in. I got a chance to talk to Bob before we came out here, and he brought up a very interesting point. He said, Steve, I'm the minority in a predominantly white sport. And Bob, being in the Boston Bruins, I want you to express what you meant by that.
Well, I was drafted in 1982 by the Bruins, and in those days, the NHL was predominantly Canada. All Canadians with the, Bobby Carpenter in 1981 was the first pick overall by the Capitals. No, he was the third pick. But Bobby and I played against each other growing up, and he really paved the way for a lot of Americans coming out as far as being accepted into the NHL. Because a lot of us were, I went to Boston College. We were labeled as the thank you. We were labeled at the college kids that maybe we weren't tough enough. The Western Canadian kids were, they can grind it out over an 80-game series. But I think we proved them wrong, and now it's great to see so many Americans in the NHL, so many college kids going to college and then eventually making the jump to the NHL.
It is a predominantly white sport, or Canadian sport. What are the Bruins doing as far as reaching out?
Well,
would you even want to see more African Americans, more Asians, more people?
I'd love to see the best players, whether they're African American, Asian. To me, I think when the Bruins had a first-round pick a few years ago, we chose Malcolm Subban. It didn't matter if he was African American. At that time, we thought he was the best prospect, and that's why we took Malcolm Subban. And I think that's how every other team in the league feels. When we talked earlier, Steve.
How does Malcolm Subban feel about being on the team?
Well, they're in training camp still, so he still has to make the team. But I think he enjoys his time here in Boston and Providence. I think he's very well accepted. But as we talked about earlier, I was fortunate to play with one of the greatest goalies all time, Grant Fuhrer, when I was in Buffalo. Grant, I sat right next to him. I looked at Grant as one of the best goalies of all time, not African American.
Maxwell.
Yes.
When you hear the N-word, I'm going there.
Whoa.
Yo. When you hear the N-word, or when you heard the N-word, when you were playing, how did you want fans to react when you heard it and someone else is saying it?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that you can fully appreciate that word being said unless you're black, and if you hear it that way in a crowd of people. I think that, sometimes when you are you're out there. And before I go any further, Steve, I want to stop one second and thank Liz Walker. Liz, you have been my hero, okay, for a long time. As a broadcaster, being black in this city, I've learned so much from you in watching you just being a professional. Now, Steve, you talk about being an African American and hearing certain things. When I first became a broadcaster here in Boston, from the South, trying to get my words together, at the time somebody said, well, I was the professor of Ebonics. What city could that possibly happen in, that you would have a person of color being criticized in that way? So I've learned one thing about being black or whatever it is, that you have to be beyond or be better than that next person in front of you. And I would tell any young person out here to look yourself in the mirror and try to criticize yourself. Be honest with yourself. As a player, as a person, in your community, whatever you do, take pride in who you are. The examples, it doesn't make any difference about being called the N-word, using the word, whatever it is. You're better than what people call you. And you have to your testament has to be at that.
Good answer. Very good answer. Tommy, I want to bring it back to you for a second because you had to deal with that and you overcame it. And you saw this city change. Would you tell us why?
Well, I can tell you that after the Elks Club incident in 1985, I protested the practice to the front office, to the Red Sox front office in 1983. Every time I protested against what I thought was an injustice perpetrated by the Red Sox front office, I always gave them an opportunity to correct the situation before I went to the press. So in 1983, I went to the Red Sox front office and told them that this practice of bringing the Elks Club official into the locker room to distribute cards to only the white players and the white staff only was hurting the morale of the African American players. And I told them this. And I walked out of the meeting, they said they'd take care of it. Next year, same thing. So this practice went on from 1972 to 1985 until a writer from the Boston Globe approached me and asked me about the practice. I told him the truth. I didn't make up anything. I just told him what the experience was with the Elks Club, and eventually I was fired because I spoke up against the practice. Now, they said I was a bad coach, but we all know.
Right, we all know different. Guys, what do you think the image of Boston is now, and how do we shed the image of racism here in this city? Tip?
Well, you know, for a long time, I still have friends that every time I talk to them and they say, where you living? I say, I'm still up in Boston. They say, isn't it a racist place up there? And, you know, for a long time, when I got drafted here, I can remember friends telling me, whatever you do, stay out of South Boston. So I'm driving down the freeway hoping that I don't run out of gas, so I have to go into South Boston. But, you know, you hear all those things, and you know, I live in a great community where I live now. I raised my children, my family here.
Where do you live?
I live in Sharon.
Sharon.
And, you know, we're such a diverse community there that, I mean, my kids are free to do whatever they want, you know, and I've always made my children aware of a lot of things, the fact that my children are biracial, that you have to be aware of this, and that, but don't judge people by anything until you see the reaction and see how they act, but just be aware of it. And, you know, for me, I've been here 35 years. I've had a great career here. I have a second career here that is, it's been fabulous for me. I think the fact that I've gotten opportunities. I've wanted to do a great job. So the next person coming up, that I've set a standard that the next person that comes in and takes my place or gets another opportunity with any of the sport franchises, that they're judged by others who've had that opportunity before them. How the community, you're going to hear things. There are things that still go on. But I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. I think you got to commend the Red Sox for reaching out and bringing everyone in as a community. It says a lot about the Red Sox and what they're trying to do. The fact that we're talking about it, I think I mentioned to someone, I woke up this morning and was going through the channels and everybody was talking about take the lead. So it's out there. I think that as long as it continues to be out here, it won't be that much of a problem.
Bob Sweeney, how do you make it better?
Well, I think there's a message out there: see something, say something. And I think, as Tip said, I think all the sports teams are cognizant and want to make all of our venues, no matter what nationality, whatever you represent, they want to make it a place where you can come and enjoy a game. And I think the Red Sox have it's great taking this on, but the Garden and the Bruins, we're no stranger to this, and we want to be have every fan experience be the best they can be. You know, I think it's come leaps and bounds, Steve, as we talked earlier. It's unfortunate, I think, to listen to Tommy's story that happened to I can't believe that happened. I'm embarrassed that it happened. But I think in today's society, it's, as Tip alluded to, I think everybody's integrating amongst one another. I have an African-American neighbor, great guy, and you know, I look at him as a friend. That's what I look at.
Max? I think the biggest thing is that, Steve, to me, you have to realize that racism is alive and well. And it happens on both sides. It happens as people of color. And I can tell you an example of that was me and my first day watching Larry Bird come in. And I watched Larry Bird come in, and I'm sitting there, and I'd already been in the NBA for 2 years. So I'm watching him come in, I'm clapping like this, going, great white hope, here he comes. Thinking in my mind. Well, after about an hour, two, him knocking down all these jump shots, I remember saying to myself, damn, that white guy can play, just thinking in my mind. But it really focuses on who you are as a person. And I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the ugly. I never knew, you know, as a Boston Celtic player, you were always despised by people of color outside of Boston, or Red Sox, or Patriots, whatever it is. You were always despised. The time I knew that that Larry Bird had crossed over and made a difference was the first day I saw him in the black barbershop on the wall with a picture of him. That is when I knew that Larry Bird had made that jump and that leap. So you learn that it's not just about sports.
Right.
You learn that sports can be a barrier that can overcome racism. And that's why I am so, and I'll just put it out there now, I am so appalled right now with what our president has done. And just saying how sports in general trying to divide us in something that is really, really been good. So that to me is really a stigmatism I don't like.
We can still make Boston better, and I do want to share this story. Larry Bird won the MVP. What did he get for an award?
He got a car.
Max won the MVP. What'd you get, Max?
I got a watch.
I love Max. One last thing before we bring the other. I'm getting a cue. I'm going to have you guys stay up here, and I'll get back to you when I bring the other executives up here as well. I'd like to bring up on stage two women who just took the initiative, absolutely essential in making this thing happen. State Senator Linda Dorsini-Forey and NAACP Boston Branch President Tanisha Sullivan to share more about their vision. and the first phase of Take the Lead.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. I want to thank you, Steve. I want to thank Reverend Liz Walker for being here and helping us moderate this incredible event. Unfortunate incidents occur, but the response was immediate, concise, and direct, displaying true leadership. An opportunity began on how do we use sports as a vehicle to talk about race and racism in society. So we want to thank our panelists, Andre Tippett, Cedric Maxwell, Bob Sweeney, and Tom Hopper, for really sharing and being candid and honest with us today. Thank you. We want to thank all of our home teams who came out to do this incredible, incredible effort. The Red Sox, the Patriots, the Celtics, the Bruins, and the Revolution, for believing and contributing to this effort. They are taking the lead and wanted to start with the public work with all of us, their fans. And you'll hear more from them shortly about some of the other initiatives going forward. It is incredible, right, that we're all here. But we know Take the Lead requires all of us working together, being in it together. And as we hear the panel and we hear the experience and the history, so important, because that's going to determine how we're going to move forward. And that's what's great about today, is that we are having real conversation and listening to people's experiences and seeing ourselves in those experiences. And I'll say, as we heard the panel, I represent the 1st Suffolk District, and I represent South Boston, Andre. And I say that because we've come a long way. We have come a long way in our great city, but also in our state. This is a Massachusetts thing, not just a Boston. And so I want to thank the young people who are here with us, who came out today as well to participate. Because they're going to set the stage on how we have these conversations. Today is an invitation for all of you to join the teams and join us in taking the lead against racism, not just here, but in our schools, in our communities, in the workplace, on the field and off the field. Today is about saying yes to diversity and inclusion and no to racism.
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon.
It is.
First, I want to take a moment and thank my family for being here today. I really appreciate always the love, the support, the encouragement, the advocacy, the guidance. So thank you. But I also want to pause to thank the team that I am so privileged and honored to serve with day in and day out at the NAACP Boston branch.
All right.
There is no work that can happen absent a team. And that's truly what today exemplifies as well. So I thank you, my A team, for being here and constantly being thought partners and guideposts in this work. So when we first began this journey several months ago, we knew this would not be easy. Because although this movement is worthy, the reality is most people, when it comes to race, they run away. We were asking people to walk toward it, to step into this conversation in a way that we've never quite done before. So what you're experiencing today truly reflects the trust, the humility, and the hope that is so deeply rooted in all of these clubs and motivates their desire to join in this conversation. So although there is much more work to do, we're encouraged. We're encouraged because here in the city of Boston, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have teams that know how to win.
That's right.
We have teams that know how to win against tough opponents. And there is absolutely no doubt that the example they are setting for us today will serve as a model and a valuable contribution to our collective work against racism. And so I want to take a moment to say this. We are so happy to see all of you here today. But please know this is not a pit stop. It is not the end of the road. This is not a drive-by. The work continues. And we're not going to be able to do this work without all of you. Because the truth of the matter is, racism is one of our toughest adversaries. It is persistent. And it will require all of us as a team to take it on and win. So we're honored today to have this opportunity to introduce you to the very first initiative under Take the Lead.
So we would like to direct everyone's attention to the video board to see and hear the unified message from our teams that they are sending to every fan attending games in their venues throughout this season. Take a look.
We are so fortunate
to play in a city
where banners are hung,
flags are raised,
and fans' voices are heard in every corner.
But it's time to step up.
When a line gets crossed,
and make sure where we play
is welcoming to us all.
We need to take responsibility
when the words we hear
cause pain.
An anger that seems to just grow and grow.
It starts here in our house.
If you hear something wrong,
offensive or hateful,
speak up, say something.
Stand for our teams.
But don't stand for racism.
We can change the game.
In a way that's more positive,
more inclusive,
more empowering,
and just as loud.
So I'm taking the lead.
So I'm taking the lead.
I'm taking the lead.
I'm taking the lead.
You can too.
In the fight against discrimination,
inequality,
injustice,
and racism.
Because if we all take the lead together,
hate falls behind.
Thank you, ladies. Great job. And you guys are taking the lead. And to watch that PSA, awesome. I'm going to call up the executives and the owners of the teams to come on to join me. Boston Bruins owner Charlie Jacobs. Celtics Senior Director of Community Engagement, David Hoffman. President of the New England Patriots Charitable Foundation, Josh Kraft. President of New England Revolution, Brian Bilello. And Red Sox President and CEO, Sam Kennedy. And we want to make sure there's enough room for everybody. Now this is a group. This is a group. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for taking the time to all come together because we can make a difference, and we are going to make a difference. As I was walking out here, I was talking to Josh Kraft, and I want to start with you, Josh, because you brought up a very important point when it comes to this city and when it comes to unification, and I'd like for you to express it.
All right, thank you, Steve. So when Steve and I were talking coming in, we're talking about the American spirit of unity and patriotism and togetherness, and obviously right now it's not at a great point. But when Steve and I talked, we talked about that when Americans are at their absolute highest, you actually can see that unity live and in color, literally and figuratively. And we used the championship parades. As you're driving down the street in duck boats, you see people of all socioeconomic, racial, ethnic backgrounds all together cheering a team. And that's at our highest point. But then recently, unfortunately, at our lowest points, like the devastation in Houston, there's hundreds of stories on the internet of the same thing. People of different racial, ethnic, socioeconomic backgrounds coming together and helping one another when they're at their most neediest. And that really tells a great story about the power of unity at the greatest points in time and the toughest points.
Excellent, excellent. David Hoffman of the Celtics, I want to turn my attention to you because you are in that Celtics locker room. You see players come and go. You see how your team comes together. And now you got a new facelift. But tell us, if you will, how the Celtics are reaching out. I know the Patriots are, I know all these sports teams are, to going out into the community. You guys are doing an awesome thing.
Yeah. Before I answer your question directly, I know I'm representing Wick and Steve Pagliuca and Rich Gotham up here. They're actually at the NBA Board of Governors meeting, which they're tackling some of these very same issues. So I'm excited to be here and be able to speak about some of the grassroots stuff that we're doing. We've been fortunate over the course of time to have just really socially minded and community-driven players. Max and everyone that came before him, the people that came after him, have just been incredible. And, you know, just as much so for the last group of guys that we've had over the last several years before the roster overhaul, you know, happened this summer. And, you know, the organization is about tradition, it's about legacy, and the last group are leaving a legacy behind in a community outreach initiative that we call the Playbook Initiative, which essentially is designed to go out and open up this dialogue, this very dialogue. And, you know, I live and breathe this stuff. I have these conversations all the time, and I was uncomfortable hearing the stories that you guys were saying a couple minutes ago. And I'm sure that there was a lot of people out there that were just as uncomfortable. And you know, our players, as you know, as we have these conversations in our locker room, and they happen all the time, we learn to embrace the uncomfortable. We became comfortable with the uncomfortable through this dialogue. And we were able to launch and will continue to roll out this year and for the foreseeable future an initiative that's essentially designed to open up this dialogue among young people. So invest in young people who 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now become people with power and influence, whether it be heads of households or whether it be teachers or police officers or hiring managers, you name it. These young people, before they form conscious or unconscious bias, can you get them to have this dialogue? And so we do it not from the perspective of a perpetrator of this, not from a perspective of a victim of this, but from the perspective of a bystander. People that hear things, people that see things, and oftentimes don't really know what to do. From a human standpoint, we're kind of taught to have a fight or a flight set of options. And so the fight, there comes social consequences to stepping in and intervening in situations when you hear something or see something going on. You have to deal with those. You have to be comfortable with those social situations. So oftentimes people say, I don't want to put myself out there, and so I'm going to choose to do nothing even though I know what I'm seeing is wrong.
Do players go out there?
And so players are out there having this conversation with folks, and we're able to generate realistic, real-life scenarios and conversations around those, and use those as a teaching tool, similar to how our guys are down in Newport right now at training camp, learning offensive principles and defensive principles on the court, practicing them now so that they can make us all proud in May and June. And we're teaching young people the same thing. Practice those situations, practice what you would do, so that when the real time comes, the game time comes and the lights come on, you'll be more equipped to deal with those.
Thank you. Charlie Jacobs of the Boston Bruins. Charlie and I got a chance to chit-chat as well, and looking at your team and seeing your team reach out. And this is what a lot of people don't know, how the Bruins reach out, how they're making a difference. Matter of fact, the Bruins, believe it or not, integrated before the Red Sox did.
That's right.
Right? Here
That's
in
right.
the city of Boston.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, Steve. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'm not going to leave you out, John.
You know, we heard a little bit of the mayor, I think, mentioned Jackie Robinson, of course, and what he did for baseball. And we talked a little bit about Bill Russell and what he's meant for basketball. But I think it goes under the radar a bit that the Boston Bruins had the first player of color in the National Hockey League in 1958. Willie O'Ree. And talk about somebody who took the lead. Willie, really an icon. And I'm sorry Willie isn't here with us today. He really should be. He will be in Boston in December when we do a league-wide celebration of our 100th anniversary. But I did want to just mention a little bit about what we're doing as the Bruins out there in their communities. We just finished a 5-city tour of surrounding areas of, we think of Boston as the center of the universe, the hub of the universe. But we try to reach out into all the spokes that we think the bee touches and activate in those communities for youth that might not be able to buy hockey equipment. We're cognizant of the fact that hockey is an expensive sport to play, and we're very proud that we just got a grand shipment of equipment. We just delivered 4,000 sets of full hockey equipment, top and tails, sort of helmets to skates, to youth around greater Massachusetts so that kids can play, and the message is hockey is for everyone.
Hockey is for everyone. Hockey is for everyone.
Thank you.
But here's the but. Hockey is for everyone. But you have one black player in the system. That's not your fault. I'm not blaming you. But how do you reach out to get others? How do you reach out to have not just African Americans in the stands, but other people in the stands?
Well, we have a very diverse fan base. We have, if I may speak for the Bruins and really frankly for the TD Garden.
Right.
I mean, we have roughly 2 million visitors a year that come through our doors. And they're of all walks of life. And we aspire and really frankly drive to have the best-in-class experience for our event goers, whether it's Bruins, Celtics, concerts, Disney shows, circus, you name it. And so, listen, our message is everyone should feel at home. The Garden doesn't necessarily belong to one club or another, but it belongs to the people of Massachusetts.
Love it. Everyone should feel at home. Love it. Sam Kennedy, you heard Tommy Harper deal with, I don't want to harp on this too much, excuse the pun, the N-word. And back in Tommy's day, the Red Sox didn't address it. The Adam Jones situation takes place. Tell us what you did.
Well, first of all, to come back home to Boston in 2002 and get to work with Tommy Harper and the men and women of the Red Sox who are here today, thank you guys, was a dream come true. And while we've had a lot of fun in the 15 years and probably the best era in the history of Boston sports with the championships, one of the most liberating things that John Henry, Tom Werner, and Larry Lucchino did was simply own the fact that our franchise had a shameful past with respect to race relations. We didn't run away from it. As Tanisha mentioned, we walked towards it, we owned it, we acknowledged it, and we've tried hard for 15 years to ensure that Fenway Park is open, welcoming to everybody. But when you go to work on May 1st and Adam Jones has the N-word hurled at him, boy, that hurts. That really hurts. And to sit here and listen to Tommy Harper tell his story, that really hurts. So to have the support of an organization that believes in addressing these issues head on, we knew that we needed to sit down with Adam immediately and apologize to him for the indignity that he suffered in center field at Fenway Park. And unbelievably, maybe not unbelievably, given what's going on in the country, the next night, another incident happened at Fenway Park. And after talking to our players, after talking to great community leaders, like the two who I'm looking at right now, like Mayor Walsh, you realize this isn't a Boston thing. It's not a Fenway Park thing. It's not a New England thing. It's an America thing. And you talk to Chris Young and Xander Bogaerts, Jackie Bradley Jr., and you realize that this happens in malls, in airports, in hotel lobbies, in schools, in hospitals. So we just felt it was important to work together with our unbelievable colleagues in sports to try and have the conversation. And I think Liz said it well, we're not going to change the world, but we are going to have the conversation. We're going to elevate and sustain this conversation as an organization, and we're very, very grateful to our colleagues in sports and our great alums. It's humbling to be on the stage with these guys.
Brian Bilello, of the Revolution. Take us inside your locker room, because if there's one locker room that's probably, right, that's probably has a multitude of everybody, it's a Revolution.
Yeah, a majority of our players weren't even born in the United States. And so when we think about diversity in our locker room, it's not just a racial diversity, it's a real cultural diversity that you have. And for us, it's a great opportunity to reach out to the community. And I've learned a ton about the Boston communities, the multitude of communities. And what's important for us is not just to get, players into the community where people can relate to them very easily, but into the communities that maybe can't relate to them very easily. And so having a great diversity of African players, of European players, of Latino players, of Asian players, and being able to bring those guys into different communities is really, really important to us. And it's great to see those guys out there and the work that they do, and to try to get them integrated to the American culture. So it's not just a race thing for us, it's really understanding all the different cultural diversity that we have and how we can share that with this great cultural diverse community we have in Boston.
So I'm going to throw this out to anybody that wants to answer it. Josh, I'll start with you. Has Boston gotten better? And what needs to happen for it to even improve more?
Well, I probably am not the person to say if Boston's gotten better, Steve, because I think it has. From everything I've heard from this event today, from the stories we've heard from Cedric and Tommy about improvements and the leaders of the community taking the lead. But I think how do we continue to get better? It's events like this. It's the community work that all of our teams and other corporations in the city do, providing opportunities to people, reducing the achievement gap, bringing everybody, getting everybody on an equal playing field, so to speak.
Sam, I want to go back to the incident with the Adam Jones thing, because before you went to Adam Jones, you had to go into your own locker room, didn't you?
Yeah, well, when the Adam Jones incident happened, and by the way, probably like most of you, we learn about most things on our cell phones these days. I saw it on Twitter a few hours after the game, when it was reported by Bob Nightingale of USA Today. We knew we needed to address it right away, and so our thought was to sit down with Adam, and Adam Grossman from our operation, who, by the way, deserves a huge shout out for pulling this all together. Adam said to me, that's great, you're going to go see Adam Jones and talk to him, and I know John Henry wants to go see him as well, but you really need to talk to our players. You need to sit down with our players first and just find out how they're feeling and some of their experiences. So it's incredible what you learn when you have a clubhouse full of diverse players from all over the country, all over the world now in our case. And the message was loud and clear. Again, this is not just Boston. This is everywhere. And we feel embarrassed that something like this could happen in our city, but we should try to recognize it and see if we can have the conversation and have some positive come out of it. And I'm so proud of our players. It's been a difficult year for everyone, and I really think that stems from the national conversation. Mr. Kraft said it so well. Josh, your dad, I call you Mr. Kraft as well, but when Robert Kraft said the other day, by the way, proud Brookline High alum, it's here for Brookline. Robert Kraft, he said, politics can be so divisive, but sports are the great unifier. And in the sports community, we have the ability to stick together and be unified. And that's what today is all about. And that's what I heard from our players was we need to stick together on this issue and have each other's backs. And John Farrell said that just the other day on Sunday when everything was going down. He said, we've got our players' backs from the top of the organization all the way down.
Okay, here's where I'm going to go next. The Yawkey Way sign. Tom Yawkey. Should that sign be taken? Well, I'm going to start with you, Tommy. Why not start with you? Let's go back in time.
Well, actually, Sam took the words out of my notes here.
Yep.
Because a shift in the way I and other people view the Red Sox organization began in the spring of 2002 when Major League Baseball clubs approved the Red Sox ownership transfer from the Yawkey Trust, an investment group, to an investment group headed by John Henry and Tom Werner. Historically, African-American baseball fans and players, fearful of being harassed, have stayed away from Fenway Park. Current owners are committed to improving the Fenway experience for everyone. Certain behavior that would make people feel unwelcome is no longer tolerated, right? And that's the response to the Adam Jones thing is what I take away, and the improvement and how things have gotten better. It's the response from Red Sox ownership that I can look to and say there was a change. Now, as far as the Yawkey sign, I think it's up to the abutters and on the street, and it's up to the Red Sox to figure this out. I don't really call anyone a racist or use those kind of labels. All I do is look at the policies. I just look at what's happened over the last.
Good point, Tom. Yeah, Sam, I've been told we got to wrap it up. We got one thing to say?
I was just going to say, I think it's important and timely and topical to address the Yawkey Way issue. And I agree with Tommy that I'm not here to call anyone a racist, especially someone I've never met. The Yawkey Foundation, the people that have worked for the Red Sox that I've known prior to John Henry and Tom Werner, fantastic, hardworking people. Yawkey Way is a symbol that has really been an issue that we've been focused on. And so we made the decision, John Henry made the decision, he sent a loud and powerful message that he would like the Red Sox to take the lead, petition the city to change the name of Yawkey Way because it's a powerful symbol of a time when this ballpark and an era might not have been as inclusive and welcoming as it should have been. So we'll see it's a community effort. The neighborhood, the community need to be involved with it. The city has been very supportive. So we're going to go through what is a very public process, but we recognize it's just a symbol, and it's the policies and the procedures and how we walk the walk that really matters.
Thank you, Sam. I do want to bring Liz back up here, and before I do want to point out one thing, and I really need to point this out. The Yawkey Foundation has gone above and beyond to help a lot of people. all over. Black, white, Hispanic, all over. And it'd be remiss for me not to point that out. That's the only thing I want to say, Sam, because I know you know that. They have reached out and they've made a difference. Liz, my dear.
Is it my time?
I love you.
Okay, so let's give a big hand to this conversation today, to Steve, to all the team representatives, to the alumni. This is important, and you stepped up, and we thank you. You have inspired us for so long on the field, on the court, and now you're inspiring us on a larger arena. The work we have to do, we talked about it. It begins at home. Actually, it begins in your heart. How will you change? How are you going to do something? Everybody here today should leave with at least one idea that you can do differently. And it is complicated. And it is about changing systems. And it is about changing other attitudes. But here's what I think we can all do. Practice grace. Now, it sounds like she's winding up for a sermon, doesn't it? And I am, but it'll be short. It transcends race, it transcends culture. It's just how you treat that other person, whether you know them or not, whether they're worth it or not, whether they've done something wonderful or deservedly or not. You practice grace. Let me give you a quick example. I'm on 93 the other day. I'm coming into the city of Boston. I have to take that on-ramp to Sterl Drive, okay? You got to wait in line on that left side because it's a long ramp, right? So I'm sitting in my car, I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm being a good American citizen. And then I slowly get down to the end of that on-ramp. I'm almost at Sterl Drive, and wouldn't you know, a car leaps right in front of me. Oh, but oh no, this is not happening today. So I played chicken with another, now I'm the Mother Teresa of Roxbury. And I decide to play chicken with another car because I'm just mad. And I'm not going to let this guy in. Practicing grace is giving somebody else a break. They may not deserve it. They may not be your own color, but you give them a break because you're all here together. There is a message out there that says it is us against them. And if we lose, they win, and if they win, we lose. I have been all over the world, and I'm here to tell you it is not us against them. There's only us. There's only us. We're the only ones who are here. So we need to treat each other like there's only us. And it does matter. And it matters if you're the owner of a sports team or if it matters if you're on 93. What will you do? What will your answer be when your children and your children's children ask you what you did during this polarized and divisive time? The choice is yours. You don't have to do everything, but you have to do something. On behalf of all the teams represented here today, my charge to you all is to take the lead. Here's how you can stay connected to this initiative. And we can look on our screen. There's no sound, so there you go. This happened to me in television news so many times. What would you do, Liz? What would you do? You just keep talking. There you go. I want you to go online, and there's going to be information for you on how to take the lead. There's all things you can do, but you can look in somebody else's eyes, and you can say, I see you. You're important. See me. I'm important too. Thank you for being here today. Go out there and do something. God bless you all. There's lunch right after this. Where is it? Upstairs? If you were invited to lunch, you know where it is. Have a good afternoon, everybody. God bless you.